This is a message from a viewer named Graham, and when I finished reading it, I didn't feel the anger I expected. I felt something closer to sadness. Because Graham's story isn't about a monster, there's no villain cackling in the shadows, no master manipulator weaving an elaborate web of deception. What Graham describes is something more uncomfortable, a situation where two people operating under completely different assumptions about reality collided, and only one of them got hurt. What you're about to hear might make you uncomfortable, not because of what was done to Graham, but because of what Graham did to himself. He walked into a situation with his eyes half open, convinced himself he was seeing clearly, and then blamed the darkness when he stumbled. If this could happen to Graham Wilcox, a 61-year-old facilities maintenance manager from Kent, a practical man who spent his career solving problems and fixing things that were broken, a man who told himself repeatedly that he knew exactly what Pattaya was, then it can happen to anyone who mistakes attention for affection and companionship for commitment. Graham reached out to me because he wanted to share what he learned, not to condemn the woman who took his money, not to warn men away from Thailand, but to hold up a mirror and show other men what self-deception looks like from the inside. What follows is his account, in his own words. And I have to tell you, this one doesn't have a satisfying ending. There's no justice, no revenge, no moment where the scales balance. There's just a man who woke up one day and realized he'd been lying to himself for 9 months straight. If you've been enjoying the stories I tell, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. My name is Graham Wilcox. I'm 61 years old, and I need to tell you about the most expensive lesson I ever learned. Not expensive because someone stole from me, expensive because I handed over the money willingly, convinced I was buying something that was never actually for sale. But before you hear how I lost 85,000 pounds to a woman in Pattaya, you need to understand who I was when I got on that plane. Because that's where the real story starts, not in a bar in Thailand, but in a semi-detached house in Kent, where a man who thought he had everything figured out was slowly suffocating from loneliness. I spent 34 years working as a facilities maintenance manager. Started as a general handyman, worked my way up, eventually ran the maintenance operations for a chain of office buildings across southeast England. It was practical work, unglamorous. The kind of job where success meant nothing went wrong. No burst pipes, no electrical failures, no angry tenants calling at 3 in the morning. I was good at it. I had a systematic mind. I could look at a building's infrastructure and identify potential problems before they became disasters. I developed checklists and procedures that my team followed religiously. By the time I retired at 59, I'd saved the companies I worked for millions of pounds in prevented damage. That same systematic approach defined my personal life. I married young 23 to a woman named Barbara. We had a daughter, Claire, who's now 34. The marriage lasted 18 years before Barbara decided she wanted something different. Someone different, as it turned out. A solicitor named Martin, who made her feel alive in ways I apparently never had. The divorce was bitter. Claire was 16 at the time, old enough to form opinions about what had happened and who was to blame. She chose her mother's side. Not completely, we still spoke, still exchanged birthday cards and occasional awkward lunches, but the easy intimacy between father and daughter had been severed. I became an obligation rather than a relationship. I didn't remarry. I dated occasionally through my 40s and 50s, but nothing stuck. The women I met seemed to want things I couldn't provide. Emotional availability, romantic spontaneity, whatever that meant. I was practical, reliable, steady. Apparently, those qualities weren't particularly attractive in the modern dating market. By the time I retired, I had accumulated 360,000 pounds in savings, a monthly pension of 1,900 pounds, and absolutely no one to share any of it with. My house was paid off, but empty. My evenings consisted of television, microwave meals, and the slow realization that I could die in that house and no one would notice for days. Claire called once a month, always sounding slightly relieved when the conversation ended. My former colleagues had scattered to their own retirements. My neighbors were polite but distant. I wasn't depressed exactly. I was functional. I maintained my home, managed my finances, kept myself in reasonable health. But there was a hollowness to my days that I couldn't quite name, a sense that I was going through motions without any real purpose behind them. That's when I started researching Thailand. I'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. British men who went to Pattaya and lost their minds along with their money. The jokes about middle-aged failures chasing young women in go-go bars. The cautionary tales about scams and schemes and hearts broken by professionals. I told myself I was different. I wasn't going to Thailand for the nightlife. I was going for the weather, the low cost of living, the chance to experience something new after decades of the same gray English routine. If I happened to enjoy a beer and some company along the way, well, that was just part of the experience. I was a grown man. I knew what I was getting into. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't naive. I was just lonely. Those 3 sentences were the lies I told myself before I ever set foot on Thai soil. They were the foundation of everything that came after. I landed in Bangkok in early February, took a taxi to Pattaya, and checked into a modest condo I'd rented for 6 months through an online platform. The unit was clean and functional. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, a balcony overlooking a swimming pool that I would never use. 12,000 baht per month, including utilities, roughly 270 pounds. The affordability still amazed me. In Kent, my monthly expenses had been close to 2,000 pounds just for the basics. Here, I could live comfortably on half my pension and watch my savings remain untouched. For the first 2 weeks, I was a model tourist. I visited temples. I walked along the beach. I ate at local restaurants and practiced the 3 Thai phrases I'd memorized from a YouTube tutorial. I was determined to experience Thailand as a country, not just as a destination for lonely Western men seeking companionship. But loneliness is patient. It waited while I explored the cultural attractions and took photographs for no one in particular. It waited while I ate dinner alone at restaurants where couples and families filled the surrounding tables. It waited while I returned to my empty condo each evening and watched British television on my laptop because the silence felt oppressive. By the 3rd week, I found myself walking toward Walking Street. I told myself I was just curious, just wanted to see what all the fuss was about, just wanted a beer and a lively atmosphere after too many quiet nights alone. Walking Street at night was unlike anything I'd experienced. The neon lights, the thumping music from every doorway, the crowds of tourists and locals moving in rivers of noise and color. Go-go bars with women dancing behind glass, beer bars with women calling out invitations, the overwhelming sensory assault of a place designed entirely around the transaction of attention. I didn't stop at the first bars. They were too aggressive, too obviously commercial. The women shouted and grabbed at passing men, and something in me recoiled from the blatant transactionality of it all. I walked further, away from the main strip, into the narrower swath where the bars were smaller and the atmosphere less frantic. That's where I found the place that would change everything. It was a small beer bar, perhaps 10 stools along a wooden counter, with a few plastic chairs arranged around low tables. No dancing girls, no thumping bass. Just a television showing football, a handful of customers, and 3 or 4 women in jeans and t-shirts who looked more like waitresses than entertainers. I sat down, ordered a singa, and that's when I met Renrada. She wasn't the most beautiful woman in the bar. I want to make that clear, because I know what people assume about these situations. They assume we're all chasing 20-year-old models who obviously couldn't be interested in us without financial motivation. And yes, there's truth to that pattern. But Renrada was 25, with a round face and a gap between her front teeth that gave her smile something genuine. She wasn't wearing makeup caked on like armor. She wasn't dressed provocatively. She looked like a young woman working a job she didn't particularly love, which is exactly what she was. She came over to my end of the bar because I was sitting alone and looked approachable. That was her job. I understood that. I wasn't naive enough to think a pretty young woman would approach a 61-year-old stranger out of genuine interest. "You want company?" she asked. "Sure. Why not?" She sat down next to me and ordered a lady drink, the standard arrangement where customers buy overpriced beverages for the women who keep them company. I knew the system. I'd read about it. The drink cost me 120 baht, roughly £2.70. A small price for conversation. "First time in Pattaya?" she asked. "First time in Thailand. You like?" "It's different. Warmer than Kent," she laughed. "Kent? Like the cigarette? Like the county? In England. southeast of London. Ah. England cold? Very cold. Gray, rainy, nothing like this. We talked for an hour. The conversation was simple, limited by her English and my complete lack of Thai, but there was something easy about it. She asked about my work, my family, why I'd come to Thailand. I gave her the sanitized version. Retired, divorced, looking for a change of scenery. She told me about herself. She was from Isan, the northeast of Thailand. Poor family. Father drank. Mother worked the rice fields. She'd come to Pattaya 3 years ago because there were no jobs in her village and she needed to send money home. Bar work not good, she said, but better than no work. What would you do if you could do anything? She thought about it. Maybe small shop, sell clothes or food, something normal. Why don't you? She shrugged. Need money first, save money. But always family needs something. Never save enough. It was a story I would hear variations of many times in the following months. The poverty trap of rural Thailand, the obligation to support extended families, the impossibility of accumulating capital when every spare baht went back to the village. At the time, it sounded tragic, sympathetic. A young woman caught in circumstances beyond her control, doing what she had to do to survive. Looking back, I realize I have no idea how much of it was true. But that night, sitting in that quiet beer bar with a woman who seemed refreshingly honest about her situation, I wanted to believe every word. When I left, I paid her bar fine 500 baht, and we walked back to my condo together. We spent the night together. In the morning, I gave her 2,000 baht for her time. I told myself this was just how things worked in Pattaya. Transactional, but honest. No pretense of romance. Just two adults exchanging what they had for what they wanted. I told myself I wouldn't get attached. I was lying. I didn't see Renrada every night. At first, it was once or twice a week. I'd stop by her bar, we'd talk for a few hours, and if the mood was right, she'd come back to my condo. I paid bar fines and gave her money in the morning. Everything was clearly defined. But something shifted over the first month. Our conversations became longer. She started asking about my day, my plans, what I'd done while she was working. When I mentioned feeling unwell one evening, she brought me soup from a nearby restaurant, unprompted, paid for with her own money. You take care of yourself, she said. Old man like you need rest. The old man was delivered with a teasing smile that somehow didn't sting. She had a way of making her comments feel affectionate rather than cruel. I started looking forward to seeing her. Not just for the physical companionship, though, that was part of it, but for the conversation, the company, the simple fact of having someone who seemed genuinely pleased when I walked through the door. By the end of my second month in Thailand, Renrada was staying at my condo 3 or 4 nights a week. She kept some clothes in my closet. Her toothbrush appeared in my bathroom. The transactional nature of our arrangement began to blur into something that felt more like a relationship. She told me she was reducing her shifts at the bar. I don't need work much now, she said. You take care of me. I didn't question this. I was paying her an allowance by then 30,000 baht per month, roughly 680 pounds, which was more than she would have earned from bar work anyway. It made sense that she would cut back her hours if she had a reliable source of income. I don't see other men, she told me one night unprompted. Only you. I know you worry, but I faithful. Those words meant more to me than I wanted to admit. I hadn't asked for exclusivity. I hadn't demanded that she stop working. But hearing her volunteer that commitment, hearing her acknowledge my unspoken fears and address them directly, something inside me unclenched. I wanted to believe that what we had was real, that despite the way it started, despite the transactional foundation, we had built something genuine on top of it, that she stayed with me because she wanted to, not just because I was paying her. I wanted to believe I was special. In Pattaya, that belief is the most expensive thing you can purchase. The financial arrangements evolved gradually, which is how these things always work. No one hands over 85,000 pounds in a single transaction. It happens in increments, each one seemingly reasonable, each one building on the last until you've crossed a line you never meant to cross. First, it was the bar fines, 500 baht each time, 4 or 5 times a week, 2,500 baht weekly, 10,000 per month, roughly 230 pounds. Then the allowance, 30,000 baht monthly, 680 pounds. Then her phone broke and she needed a new one. a smartphone so she could stay in touch with me while I explored the city during the day. 15,000 baht. 340 pounds. Then her old scooter died, and she needed reliable transportation. A used Honda Click, nothing fancy. 45,000 baht, 1,000 pounds. Then her mother got sick and needed hospital treatment. Her father couldn't work because of his drinking. Her younger brother needed school fees. Her grandmother required medication. Each crisis was presented apologetically. "I hate ask you," Renrada would say, looking at the floor. "But family have no one else. I pay you back when I can." I never expected to be paid back. I told myself that wasn't the point. The point was helping someone I cared about navigate circumstances that weren't her fault. The point was being generous because I could afford to be generous. The point was that money meant nothing if it just sat in a bank account while someone I loved struggled. Love. When did I start using that word? I can't pinpoint the exact moment, but somewhere in those first 6 months, I stopped thinking of Renrada as a bar girl I was financially supporting and started thinking of her as my girlfriend, my partner, someone who had chosen to be with me despite having other options. The 85,000 pounds accumulated across 9 months. Bar fines, allowances, emergency payments, a motorbike, medical bills, school fees, a cash gift so she could send money home for Songkran, another gift for her mother's birthday. I tracked none of it systematically. I didn't want to see the total. As long as each individual expense seemed reasonable, I could avoid confronting the cumulative reality. I told myself, over and over, this isn't a scam. This is just how things work here. And in a way, I was right. It wasn't a scam in the traditional sense. Renrada never stole from me. She never forged documents or hacked my accounts. Every baht I gave her was given voluntarily, in exchange for something I believed I was receiving. The problem was that what I believed I was receiving and what she was actually providing were two completely different things. They were there from the beginning. The inconsistencies, the gaps, the moments that didn't quite make sense if you examined them closely. But I didn't want to examine them closely. I wanted to believe the story I'd constructed, and that meant ignoring anything that contradicted it. There were nights when Renrada didn't reply to my messages. She always had an explanation. The next day her phone died. She fell asleep early. She was visiting family in Eisen. Reasonable explanations. Each one. But they accumulated. There were sudden mood shifts that I couldn't account for. Days when she was distant and distracted. When she seemed to be thinking about something she wouldn't share with me. When I asked what was wrong, she would shake her head and say, "Nothing, just tired." There were last-minute excuses that canceled our plans. A sick relative, a friend in crisis, an emergency at the bar that required her presence even though she supposedly wasn't working there anymore. There were stories that didn't quite line up, details that shifted between tellings, timelines that contradicted themselves if I thought about them too carefully. Each time I noticed something, I made a choice. I chose to accept her explanation. I chose to give her the benefit of the doubt. I chose to believe that my suspicions said more about my own insecurity than about her behavior. "You don't trust me?" She asked that question whenever I pushed too hard on an inconsistency, and it worked every time. Because the question reframed the situation, made it about my failure to trust rather than her failure to be trustworthy. I didn't want to be the suspicious, controlling boyfriend. I didn't want to be the paranoid old man who couldn't accept that a young woman might actually care for him. I didn't want to destroy what we had over doubts that might be nothing more than my own fear of happiness. So, I backed down. I apologized for questioning her. I accepted whatever explanation she offered and resolved to be more trusting in the future. This happened dozens of times across 9 months. Dozens of opportunities to see what was actually happening. Dozens of moments when a clearer-eyed man would have recognized the pattern. But I wasn't a clearer-eyed man. I was a lonely man who had found something that felt like love, and I was willing to blind myself rather than risk losing it. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Renrada had stayed over the night before and was getting ready to leave. She was meeting friends, she said, bar girls she'd worked with, who were having some kind of gathering. Her phone was charging on the kitchen counter while she showered. I was making coffee, not thinking about anything in particular, when the screen lit up with a notification. I glanced at it without intention. Just a reflexive look at a glowing screen. The message was in English, from someone named Mike UK. Miss you, baby. When I come back, we have special time. You think about me? My stomach dropped. I told myself it could be anything. An old customer who didn't know she'd stopped working. Someone who hadn't gotten the message that she was in a relationship now. A misunderstanding. But I didn't believe it. Something in my gut had shifted, and I knew that if I looked at that phone, I would find things I didn't want to find. I picked it up. The passcode was her birthday, she'd told me once, casually, never imagining I'd use it. The screen unlocked, and I opened her messages. What I found ended 9 months of self-deception in approximately 3 minutes. There was Mike from the UK, yes, but there was also Thomas from Germany, and Kenji from Japan, and Robert from Australia, and William from the Netherlands, and several Thai names I didn't recognize. Each conversation had the same tone, the same intimacy, the same casual endearments and inside jokes and promises of reunion. Each man clearly believed he had a special relationship with Renrada. Each man was apparently providing financial support of some kind. I scrolled through months of messages. The dates overlapped with our relationship entirely. While she was staying at my condo, telling me she was faithful, she was arranging to meet other men. While I was paying her allowance, she was collecting allowances from a portfolio of supporters. Some of the messages were explicit. Others were romantic. A few were purely transactional negotiations about money, discussions of when payments would arrive. But all of them shattered the illusion I had so carefully constructed. I wasn't Renrada's boyfriend. I wasn't even her primary source of income. I was one customer among many, distinguished only by my willingness to believe I was special. She came out of the bathroom with her hair wrapped in a towel, smiling, asking if I wanted to get lunch before she left. She saw my face and stopped. She saw her phone in my hand and understood immediately what had happened. I expected panic, tears, desperate lies, the dramatic confrontation I'd seen in 1,000 movies about infidelity and betrayal. What I got was something much worse. She sighed, sat down on the couch, looked at me with an expression that wasn't guilt or shame or fear. It was something closer to resignation, maybe even mild irritation. You read my phone. Yes, that private. Is it true? All these men, you've been seeing them the whole time? She didn't answer directly. She reached for a cigarette, lit it, and took a long drag before speaking. Graham, you know I work in Pattaya. You know what bar girl means. You know this from beginning. You told me you were faithful. You told me you didn't see other men. I tell you what you want to hear, same I tell everyone. This is the job, so you lied to me. She shrugged, one shoulder, dismissive. You want me to say I love you only, I never touch another man, you most special person in my life. Okay, I say that. You feel better? How can you? I couldn't finish the sentence. You help me because you want to. I never promise you anything. I never say we marry. I never say I stop working. You give money, I spend time with you. That's it. That's always what this is. I thought we had a relationship. We have relationship. I girlfriend, you boyfriend. You pay, I stay. That's Pattaya relationship. You want something different. Maybe you look wrong place. I stood there, holding her phone, feeling like the ground had shifted under my feet. Because here's the thing, she wasn't wrong. Everything she said was technically accurate. She had never explicitly promised me anything she didn't deliver. She had never claimed we were building toward marriage. She had never said she loved me. I had filled in those blanks myself. I had interpreted her attention and affection and physical presence as evidence of something that existed only in my imagination. You knew what I believed, I said. You knew I thought we were exclusive. I know you want to think that. Yes, but I never tell you to think that. You choose, and you didn't correct me. Why I correct you? You happy. I make money. Everyone win. Until you decide to be police and check my phone. There was no remorse in her voice, no guilt, just a kind of weary practicality, as if she were explaining something obvious to someone who should have understood it from the beginning. 9 months, I said, 85,000 pounds. And you never once felt bad about taking money from an old man who thought you cared about him. She looked at me then with something that might have been pity. Graham, you not old man. You lonely man who come to Pattaya looking for something. I give you something. Maybe not what you want, but something. You not happy? Okay, I go, but don't say I steal from you. Every baht you give me, you give because you want to give. I never take from you. She finished her cigarette, stood up, walked to the closet where she kept her clothes, and started packing them into a plastic bag. I didn't stop her. I didn't say anything else. Because she was right. That was the worst part. She was right. Renrada left that afternoon. No shouting, no pleading, no dramatic final confrontation. She took her things, walked out the door, and that was it. I sat in my condo for the rest of the day, trying to process what had happened. Not the discovery that was simple enough, but my own role in it, my own willful blindness, my own desperate need to believe in something that had never been real. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying conversations, looking for the lies I should have caught. But the thing was, she hadn't lied much. She'd omitted. She'd allowed me to believe things without explicitly confirming them. She'd told me what I wanted to hear because I so obviously wanted to hear it. The deception was real, yes, but the person most responsible for my deception was me. I stayed in Pattaya for another 3 weeks after that, but everything had changed. The city that had seemed vibrant and exciting now looked like what it was, a machine designed to separate lonely foreign men from their money. Every smile from a bar girl, every friendly conversation, every apparent connection, I now saw the transaction underneath. And I saw the men who hadn't seen it yet. Older Western men sitting in bars with young Thai women, believing they'd found something special, looking at their companions with an affection that wasn't returned, paying for attention they mistook for attraction. I had been one of them. For 9 months, I had been exactly that naive, exactly that desperate, exactly that willing to trade money for the illusion of connection. I couldn't be in Pattaya anymore. The mirrors were everywhere. I flew back to England 2 months earlier than planned. The empty house in Kent was waiting for me, unchanged, and I walked through its silent rooms wondering what I had thought I was escaping when I left. In the months that followed, I tried to construct a narrative that made sense of what had happened. At first, I blamed Renrada. She had manipulated me. She had lied to me. She had taken advantage of my loneliness and my generosity. I was a victim. But that narrative fell apart when I examined it honestly, because the truth was that she had never forced me to give her anything. She had never threatened me or deceived me about fundamental facts. She was a bar girl in Pattaya, and she behaved exactly like a bar girl in Pattaya. The only surprise was that I had expected something different. Then I tried blaming myself, but not productively. I called myself stupid, naive, a pathetic old man who deserved what he got. This was easier in some ways, because it felt like taking responsibility. But it wasn't really taking responsibility. It was just self-flagellation, a way of punishing myself without actually learning anything. The truth, when I finally arrived at it, was more uncomfortable than either of those narratives. The truth was that I had gone to Pattaya wanting something, and I had found a system designed to provide the appearance of that something in exchange for money. The system worked exactly as it was supposed to work. The women in the bars were doing a job, and most of them did it well, providing companionship, attention, and the illusion of intimacy to men who were willing to pay for it. The problem wasn't the system. The problem was that I had tried to pretend the system wasn't there. I wanted to believe that Renrada was different, that what we had transcended the transactional context in which it began, that you could meet someone in a bar in Pattaya and build a genuine relationship, just like you could meet someone anywhere. And maybe you can. I won't say it's impossible. There are probably men who met bar girls and built real lives together, based on mutual respect and genuine affection. But I wasn't one of them, and the signs were there from the beginning, if I had been willing to see them. The 85,000 pounds was gone. That was a simple fact I had to accept. There was no mechanism to recover it. Renrada hadn't stolen from me, she had provided services, and I had paid for those services. And the fact that I had misunderstood the nature of the transaction was my problem, not hers. But the financial loss wasn't the real cost. The real cost was harder to quantify. I had damaged my ability to trust, not just other people, myself. I had demonstrated to myself that my judgment in matters of the heart was fundamentally unreliable, that I could look at a situation objectively and still see only what I wanted to see, that my loneliness could override my intelligence and experience and leave me vulnerable to exploitation. How do you recover from that? How do you enter another relationship, romantic or otherwise, knowing that your own perceptions can't be trusted? I had also damaged my financial security. £85,000 wasn't everything I had, but it was a significant portion of my savings. My retirement plans, which had been comfortable, were now merely adequate. The buffer I'd counted on for medical emergencies or unexpected expenses had been dramatically reduced. I would spend the rest of my life with less than I should have had because I spent 9 months paying for something that didn't exist. And I had damaged my sense of self. I had thought of myself as a practical man, a sensible man, the kind of man who could look at a situation clearly and make rational decisions. That self-image was gone now, replaced by the uncomfortable knowledge that I was capable of profound self-deception when I wanted something badly enough. That knowledge doesn't go away. You carry it with you, a permanent reminder that you are not as wise or as rational as you believed yourself to be. I've had 2 years to think about this, 2 years of distance and reflection, and I've come to some conclusions about Renrada that might surprise you. I don't think she was evil. I don't think she set out to destroy me or even particularly to deceive me. I think she was a young woman from a poor family who found a way to make money in an industry that exists because foreign men are willing to pay for companionship. She did what that industry required her to do. Did she lie to me? Yes, in the sense that she told me I was the only one when I wasn't. But she also told me what I desperately wanted to hear, and I rewarded her handsomely for telling me. From her perspective, she was just doing her job well. Did she manipulate me? Yes, in the sense that she calibrated her behavior to maintain my investment in the relationship. But I was also manipulating myself, constructing elaborate justifications for why our situation was different from all the cautionary tales I'd heard. Did she care about me at all? I don't know. I'll never know. There may have been moments when her affection was genuine. There may have been times when she enjoyed our conversations and our time together beyond the financial transaction, or there may not have been. She's not a monster, but she's not an angel either. She's a person who did what she needed to do to survive and support her family, operating within a system that doesn't reward honesty. I don't hate her. I can't even really blame her. She operated according to the rules of her environment, and I walked into that environment with my own agenda and my own blind spots and my own desperate need to find something I had lost. We were both, in our own ways, trying to get something out of the transaction. The difference is that she succeeded and I failed. I didn't want to be one of those men who wrote cautionary tales about Thailand. The whole genre seemed sad to me, old men warning other old men about the dangers of beautiful young women, as if the problem were the women and not the men's own weakness. But here I am, writing a cautionary tale. Because maybe someone will read this and recognize themselves, and maybe that recognition will save them from making the same mistakes I made. So here's what I learned. Not about Thailand or bar girls or Pattaya, about myself, and about how easy it is to see only what you want to see. First, loneliness makes you stupid. I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it as a clinical observation. When you're profoundly lonely, when you've spent years without meaningful connection, your judgment becomes compromised. You become so hungry for companionship that you'll accept substitutes. You'll mistake attention for affection. You'll interpret kindness as love. And you'll ignore evidence that contradicts the story you want to believe, because the story feels better than the alternative. If you're lonely enough to consider moving to another country in search of connection, you're probably lonely enough to make terrible decisions about the connections you find there. Second, transactional relationships don't become genuine just because you want them to. If a relationship starts with an exchange of money for companionship, that transaction doesn't disappear when you start having feelings. The fundamental dynamic remains. You can tell yourself the money doesn't matter, but it does. You can tell yourself she would stay even if you stopped paying, but she probably wouldn't. The transaction is the foundation, and you can't build a genuine relationship on a transactional foundation. Third, if someone makes money from companionship, exclusivity is an illusion. This should be obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me. When a woman's income depends on maintaining relationships with multiple men, there's no incentive for her to be faithful to any one of them. Telling each man he's special is just good business practice. The words don't mean what you want them to mean. Fourth, trust without verification is just hope. I trusted Renrada because I wanted to trust her. I didn't verify anything she told me because verification felt like an accusation. But trust has to be earned, not granted. And the way you earn trust is through consistent behavior over time, not through words that tell you what you want to hear. Fifth, the most dangerous lies are the ones you tell yourself. Renrada's deceptions were minor compared to the deceptions I practiced on myself. She told me I was special, and I chose to believe it. She told me she was faithful, and I chose not to investigate. She told me 100 small lies, and I told myself 1,000 bigger ones. If I had been honest with myself from the beginning about what I was looking for, about what I was actually receiving, about the nature of the transaction, I would never have been hurt. Not because Renrada would have behaved differently, but because my expectations would have matched reality. I wasn't lied to once. I lied to myself every day. I'm back in Kent now. The semi-detached house, the gray weather, the routine I fled to Thailand to escape. But something's different. I'm different. I don't blame Pattaya for what happened to me. I don't blame Thailand. I don't even really blame Renrada, though I'm not going to pretend the experience didn't hurt. What I've done is accept that I went looking for something I couldn't buy. Connection, intimacy, the feeling of mattering to another person. These things can't be purchased. They have to be built slowly through mutual investment and genuine vulnerability. I tried to skip that process. I tried to use money to manufacture what can only be grown organically. And I got exactly what I paid for a performance of connection that disappeared the moment I stopped paying for it. I'm 63 now, 2 years older than when I first walked into that bar in Pattaya. I've lost 85,000 pounds I'll never get back. I've lost faith in my own judgment. I've lost the illusion that I'm too smart to be fooled. But I've gained something too. I've gained honesty about what I was actually looking for and why I was looking for it in the wrong places. I've gained understanding of my own vulnerability to deception when I want something badly enough. I've gained the knowledge that no amount of money can fix loneliness. It can only mask it temporarily. I don't date anymore. Not because I'm scared of being hurt, but because I've realized I need to fix something inside myself before I can offer anything valuable to another person. The loneliness that drove me to Pattaya didn't originate in Pattaya, and it won't be solved by finding another woman to fill the emptiness. I'm working on it, slowly, learning to be comfortable with my own company, learning to find meaning in things that don't depend on another person's attention, learning to be alone without being lonely. It's harder than paying a bar fine. It takes longer than 9 months. There's no guarantee it will work, but at least what I'm building now is real. I still think about Renrada sometimes. Not romantically. That illusion shattered completely the day I read those messages. But I wonder about her, what her life is like now. Whether she's still working the bars, or whether she found the normal life she claimed to want. Whether she ever thinks about the older British man who believed he was special. She's probably not thinking about me. Why would she? I was a customer who stopped paying. In Pattaya terms, that's not a tragedy, it's just a closed account. But I hope, in some small way, that the money I gave her actually helped her family, that her mother got the medical care she needed, that her brother finished school, that some portion of those 85,000 pounds went towards something real, even if the relationship that funded it was imaginary. I'll never know. And maybe that's appropriate. Maybe the transaction was always supposed to be one-directional, my money for her attention, with no lasting connection on either side. I used to think that was sad. Now I just think it's what it is. If you're watching this, and you're thinking about going to Thailand to find what I was looking for, I'm not going to tell you not to go. That's not my place. You're an adult. You can make your own decisions. But I'm going to ask you to be honest with yourself about what you're actually looking for. And I'm going to ask you to remember that attention is a business in places like Pattaya. That the women you meet are professionals at making you feel special. That the exclusivity you think you've found is almost certainly an illusion. And I'm going to ask you to remember that the most dangerous person in that bar isn't the woman asking for a drink. It's the lonely man in the mirror who's willing to believe anything that makes him feel less alone. That man will spend your money faster than any scammer. I know because I was him. My name is Graham Wilcox, and this is my warning to you. If Graham's story resonated with you, if it made you think about someone you know, or about your own assumptions about love and connection, please share this video. Somewhere out there, another man is sitting in a bar in Pattaya, looking at a woman who seems different from all the others, believing he's found something real. Maybe hearing this will give him pause. And if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to this channel, because these stories need to be told, even when they're uncomfortable, especially when they're uncomfortable. Until next time, stay safe out there.